Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you happen to be in the world, and welcome to this edition of the Esri Law Enforcement webinar series, in which we will be discussing ArcGIS for police transparency. I'm John Beck, Esri Director of Law Enforcement Solutions, and I'm joined today by Chris Delaney, the product owner for all of our law enforcement solutions, including the all-new police transparency solution, which we are going to be discussing today. Let's get started by taking a quick look at the agenda. First up, some housekeeping. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can put them in the chat window and we will either answer them directly in the chat or at the end of the webinar if we have time. Or we'll follow up directly with you after the webinar if we don't get to your question today. We are going to get started with a quick overview of the current state of policing, how police transparency can help, and then we're going to jump right into the demonstration of the solution, what you get, and how it works. We're also going to discuss how to get started and wrap up with some questions as we have time. A quick additional note, we're going to follow up with an email to all of the attendees today. We'll send that email out probably next week. That's going to include some resource links and how to get to the solution. The solution goes live next Tuesday, November 10th, so we'll probably send it after the solution goes live. So let's jump right into it. You know, for all of us, 2020 has been a challenging year, and as we all know, it's been a particularly difficult time for police and to work in policing. There's been several high-profile incidents involving officer police agency use of force that have resulted in deaths. Since May in the US, there's been thousands of protests in hundreds of cities demanding racial justice for victims of police violence, and there have been many calls to defund the police across the country, and these protests have even grown globally and have grown to other countries as well. It's become widely recognized that police reform is needed and that police need to become more accountable, better at reporting, more transparent, and that community engagement and open communications with the public are going to be key to making change. We at Esri, and I think others, believe that technology can help make these change and overcome these challenges. But there's going to be challenges to implementing technology, not the least of which is getting at your agency's data to make it more accessible to the public. Most of our police data is siloed in old systems. It's not easy to get it out and into a user-friendly format for the public to access. So that'd be the first challenge. Next up, police also lack good citizen engagement tools. We're not able to share data easily to perform key performance indicators. We can't track those, and we don't have a suitable platform for engaging with the community. Which leads us to the next challenge, coming up with a budget to pay for this new technology and getting internal resources to support these efforts, which is going to bring us to the topic of today's webinar. In the next, we got about 55 minutes or so, we're going to show you how the technology you already own can help you overcome these technology challenges and build your own citizen engagement portal to promote open and transparent policing at your agency. First, though, why don't we start by discussing solutions, what we do at Esri Solutions, what law enforcement solutions are, and how they work. Hey, Chris.
Hey, John. Thank you, and thanks everyone for joining us. So, as John mentioned, we are really excited today to share with you the police transparency solution that will be released next week. You know, as he mentioned, this is really a response to what we've been hearing and seeing law enforcement agencies looking to do over the last 6 to 9 months, trying to leverage the ArcGIS platform to respond to some of the challenges that John alluded to and to help grow their organization's transparency efforts. So what we've been working on is a solution to really help you jumpstart those efforts. That's called Police Transparency. It's going to be released next week, and its goal is to help law enforcement agencies share authoritative information and communicate engagement efforts that build trust with the general public and community stakeholders. If you are not familiar with ArcGIS solutions, I want to take a minute just to explain what they are before I jump into the capabilities of the police transparency solution, just in case any of you may be unfamiliar about the solutions capabilities that we have at Esri. So if you're not familiar, ArcGIS solutions, and particularly our ArcGIS solutions for law enforcement, for which I am responsible, are fully supported configurations of the ArcGIS platform apps. So think about web applications or ArcGIS Pro, any of those kinds of functionalities that are really organized around missions and workflows in law enforcement, and that those mission and workflow needs come from what we're hearing from the law enforcement user community. They are free, which means they're leveraging your existing ArcGIS investment. If you have the software and licensing ready to go, then you can use these, deploy them to your organization, and take advantage of them at no additional cost. They are ready to use in the sense that we provide you a starting data schema for layers and symbology. We get the maps all ready to use. We configure the apps. Everything's all connected together, and it's turnkey. It's ready to use the minute you deploy it to your organization. You can then extend it as well, because all of these solutions are based off of the underlying core set of apps that are part of the overall ArcGIS platform. So if you want to change the data schema for a layer, you can do that. If you want to modify one of these apps to fit your organizational needs, you can do that. And so in this way, these solutions really help to accelerate the implementation of projects that you're working on and deliver value to your constituents in your organization more quickly, because we're giving you a starting point as opposed to having to start from scratch. And as I'll show a little bit later, these are now available in an even easier form than ever, thanks to our new solutions browser-based app that enable you to deploy these solutions in one click to your organizational portal. Some of you who are already familiar with our solutions for law enforcement may have already downloaded and deployed some of our existing solution sets, but for those of you who are not, we have a configuration of ArcGIS Pro called Crime Analysis. It helps simplify the experience of the most common sets of crime analysis processes for people using ArcGIS Pro, along with some customized tools. We have a whole series of apps to help law enforcement agencies support their planning and operational needs around managing special events. We have tools to plan and manage tactical operations. And we've got tools to help you ingest data from your records management or CAD system, and to be able to provide daily dashboards that look at crime, calls for service, or arrest data to help drive operational decision-making within your agency. So next, I'm going to move on to starting to provide a preview of the capabilities of the police transparency solution. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention that as we build new ArcGIS solutions for law enforcement, we take great cares to ensure that what we build is consistent with needs of the user community. And that means reaching out to law enforcement agencies and the personnel at those agencies to help drive and refine the solutions that we build. And I just wanted to acknowledge a few different organizations that have helped us with the police transparency solution. And that includes the Police Foundation, Marion, Iowa Police, Toronto Police Service, Philadelphia Police Department, Rochester Police Department, San Bernardino County Sheriff, Alachua County, Florida, York Police Service, New York State DCJS, and the Houston Police Department. Thank you all for the feedback that you provided as we developed the police transparency solution. So getting into the police transparency solution, what is it, and what kind of information can it provide to your community? Well, at a high level, the police transparency solution is going to enable you to deliver authoritative information and communicate engagement efforts to your community members in 5 main ways. First and foremost, and what you're seeing here is a screenshot of the main page of the police transparency solution. First and foremost, it's going to help you enable your community members to discover new community engagement opportunities. whether that is being able to find their community policing officer using a simple app to click on a map or enter in their address, or it's to be able to provide their feedback on their satisfaction with performance or their perceptions of community safety. And it's a series of apps to help support the citizens to be able to report crime problems, and for your community policing officers to work with community groups using the SARA model of in problem-oriented policing, scan, analyze, respond, assess, to be able to work through a problem-solving process to deal with those crime problems, and then to provide feedback to the community on the status of those problems. It's also going to help them to explore the diversity of your agency through a workforce diversity page that enables them to look at breakdowns of your force by demography and compare that to the composition of your community. It's going to help residents understand crime statistics, both longer-term historical trends overall by groupings and by individual crimes, or to be able to understand current crime conditions and to be able to build reports about those current crime conditions. And as you'll see in a few minutes, all of these crime-related apps have already been configured to use the new crime reporting national standard of the United States, the National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS, which is as of January 2021, will be the new standard for crime reporting in the United States per the Federal Bureau of Investigation, moving away from the traditional UCR, Uniform Crime Reports, summary reporting system. It also will enable you to help provide information to your citizens about use of force, helping them to understand what use of force is, why officers use it, and to help them explore characteristics of use of force incidents by neighborhood, by subject of force, and by officer. So in this way, you're enabling more citizens and community members to provide oversight to the use of force, but also educating them about the proper use of force and why law enforcement agencies and why your agency uses force in the scenarios in which force is properly applied by a law enforcement agency. And so before I hop into the demonstration, just kind of at a high level from a technical perspective, what is the police transparency solution? You're just seeing a bunch of screenshots. The police transparency solution is a configured, ready-to-use 5-page website. We use ArcGIS Hub to do this. So this is going to be for citizens. It's a public-facing website. Each page has space for your resources, so places to put frequently asked questions or links to other public-facing content that you want to share. It's going to have space that has text for you to configure into your messages to promote your agency's work, and places for your logo and images that are going to be configurable to your branding, as well as about 15 ready-to-use public-facing web mapping applications that will help citizens explore and answer questions across all of these different lenses that I've just described. As with all of our solutions, all of these apps and the websites are already hooked up and ready to use the minute you deploy them. So it comes with all of the layers you need. It comes with all the maps. All that stuff is ready to go. You just need to hydrate data, and then boom, everything turns on and is ready to go. It is also mobile device friendly. So if you're, as many people are now, wanting to be able to access this kind of public information on the go from a mobile device, it supports and is responsive to mobile devices. If you are working in a community where you have a number of different commonly spoken languages, it also supports auto-translate through the sort of out-of-the-box browser-based translation that's available in modern browsers. Okay, so with that, we thought that the easiest thing to do and the most useful thing to do was really just to jump right into the solution and show you the components of the solution in a live version of the site. So that's what you're looking at right now. This is our Try It Live demonstration site for police transparency. I'll share this link with you at the end of this webinar so you can play with it yourself. This is the main page of the police transparency solution. So on this home page, you will see a place for a message from your chief or your sheriff. All of the images that are in here are stock images. They're meant to be placeholders. So the idea is anywhere you see any of this text, you can modify this with the name of your organization. So you can put images that reflect, you can modify the name of the solution to fit your needs in any of the text. This main site also provides kind of a high level of the different major initiatives that are part of the police transparency site. Those are the ones that I mentioned before: community engagement, workforce diversity, crime conditions, and use of force, a place for answering frequently asked questions. If you are using Hub Premium, you have the ability to leverage community identities, which means that you have the ability to, as a citizen, sign up, have a unique community identity, follow this initiative to be able to receive updates about new things that come to the site or events that are upcoming, and that provides the agency a number of opportunities to interact in more meaningful ways with community members as part of problem-solving projects and things of that nature. You also have access to all of your open data sites that you make available, all the open data sets, I should say, that are part of the solution. So for example, I can click on crimes, and that's going to open for me the open data set that is associated with all of my crime data in my website. So I can click on this, I can see all of this data. I have the ability to review any of the records in this data. And if I want to, I can download this as a spreadsheet, a shapefile, a KML, or if I have the need to and I want to be able to connect to a service that's live and ready to use, I can do that as well. There's also a place for your social media feeds from Twitter or Facebook, and a spot to add in additional resources. The header and footer also contains places for you to enter in your logo and your contact information for your department, as well as all of your social media links. The next page in the police transparency solution is the community engagement page. The community engagement page provides a number of different capabilities. The very first and foremost capability, however, is to help residents and stakeholders understand the community policing officer responsible for their area. So using this app that's embedded into the site called My Community Officer, I can either enter in an address into this text box, or I can click on the map, and that will zoom to the community policing area that is responsible for that particular location, and you can see who your community policing officer is. You can see a picture, you can call or email that individual, and there's place for notes about when this when that officer has community meetings, the location of the office where that community policing area works out of, the work hours of the community policing officer. And so this is really intended as a way to enable your community members to connect with their kind of initial point of contact for community outreach. From there, we have a number of different capabilities. The first and foremost is around supporting crime problem solving projects. So this next section has a button for submitting a crime problem. This is going to open up the Crime Problem Reporter app. The Community Crime Problem Reporter app is a mechanism for community members to report non-emergency crime problems. So a crime problem being described as a series of recurring crime or disorder events that are happening over time. And so as I log into this app, I'm able to see all of the other recently submitted problems that have been identified by other community members. I can come in and read those. I could like a problem to indicate, yes, I agree that that is a problem. I also have the ability to enter in my own comments about that problem. So in this way, we're sort of crowdsourcing an understanding of prioritization and particular crime problems that may be an issue to multiple residents. I also have the ability to enter in a crime problem by pressing the Submit a Crime Problem button. And from here, I can give it a name. I'm just going to call this burglary problem. I'm going to say it is on South Charles Street, 400 block. Residential burglaries during the daytime. And then I can optionally enter in my information, which is not shared publicly, but is available in the instance you want to be able to provide that information to a community policing officer for follow-up. And then I've got the ability to just draw on the map the area where that particular problem is occurring. And then once I report it, it now shows up and other citizens can comment or like that problem. So from there, your community policing officers in your organization have the ability to manage crime problems that are occurring in your community. So now the person who uses this particular app that's called the Community Crime Problem Manager would be a community policing officer. So that community policing officer, let's say they work in Pioneer neighborhood, can come into the Pioneer neighborhood. They can filter for the crime problems that are occurring in their particular neighborhood. I can even see the new problem that has popped up. If I need to create a hard copy report of that, I can click this Create Report button. But now this manager app will enable me to collect data on crime problems that have occurred in the community and shepherd them through a problem-solving process using the SARA model, Scan, Analyze, Respond, and Assess, from problem-oriented policing. So the idea here is myself as a community policing officer would come in and would come into my list, filter by the neighborhood I'm responsible for, and I can see a list of all of the brand new submitted crime problems that have come in today. And as I do that, I can see that here's my new burglary problem, and I can see a list that shows me a bunch of different data that I can capture and edit about this particular problem. So I can set the phase of the crime problem solving process. I can enter that, yes, I'm going to take responsibility for this particular problem, and then I can assign it a type of problem. It's a property crime problem. I can add additional details about the problem, and I can validate the information provided by the citizen, so the location, the neighborhood it's in, and I can see the information about the submitter of the information. So that helps me validate that problem, and then I can move into the next step in the process where I'm going to have my community meeting. And in my community meeting, I'm going to review all of the new problems that have come in the past month, or however frequently you review your problems. And I'm going to share that information with the community members in the meeting. And you're going to use that information to discuss those problems, set a priority for those problems. So maybe we're going to say, hey, this is a pretty high priority problem. Everybody agrees. And then they're going to decide, is this something that we actually want to tackle together, community and the police, as a problem-solving project? And if they don't, they're going to decline it and no further action will be taken. But if they're going to approve it for a community problem-solving project, it'll then move into the next phase of analysis where we will engage either the crime analyst or the CPO or a member of the community to perform some analysis of police data to be able to understand exactly what's happening. And so that in now analyzing that data, the results that you generate can be entered in here. That'll capture a summary of what we learned and important victim, offender, or place-based characteristics that are relevant for any kind of response. And if as part of that analysis, a web-based product like a story map is created. You can even enter in that URL here so that it can be referenced. Once that the analysis has been completed, it's going to be ready for a response. And that response is going to be collaborative with the community and involve police and non-police based responses. There's going to be a number of fields to capture there where I can look at set the goals for the particular response using SMART objectives, describe the tactics that are going to be applied to address this problem and exactly who's going to be responsible, and then what the team members are going to be for that particular response, and then the start and the end date of that response. And then lastly, once the response is actually complete, then you'll have the ability, I'm going to remove my filter so I've got, I can see one of these other example areas. I can come in here and I can just mark whether or not the assessment, whether the response goals were achieved. And then once the assessment has been performed, provide a summary that describes what you learned in the assessment, both in terms of outcome results, but also any sort of process or implementation lessons that are learned that are going to be relevant for future teams trying to solve that particular problem. And then the date of the assessment. So this tool is not necessarily going to be doing all of the work for you, but this app is really a mechanism by which you can usher crime problems that are identified by the public through a process to apply the SARA method for community-based problem solving to work through crime problems and to solve them. And as part of that, when you come back to the police transparency page, you'll see another button here that says monitor problem solving projects. When I click on that, this is a public-facing dashboard that's going to enable all of your community members to see all of the active crime problem solving projects that are currently out there in the community. So if I'm interested in looking at, for my particular community, all of the projects in that community, I can see those projects, I can see the phase of the process that they're in, the type of problem, and if I want to be able to explore any of those particular projects, what's going on, this one is closed, what it was, and I can see the details about that project and what happened and what the results were. So in this way, this enables your collaborative problem solving process that's occurring between your community members and your community policing officers to be completely transparent so that your community members can be aware of the projects that are happening to address crime problems in their area that they care about, what is being done, and ultimately the results of those projects. So a much more collaborative approach generally, but then also enabling oversight and transparency from citizens to those projects. The last portion of the community engagement page is a brief police interaction survey. So this is a configuration of Survey 123, and it's going to help your residents or stakeholders provide feedback on an experience that they've had with your particular organization. And so this is based on many common types of police interaction feedback surveys that are currently out there, either in hard copy or in electronic form. And this gives an individual the ability to describe the nature of their interaction, when it occurred, and then rate it. Was the employee respectful? They explain their actions, next step, handled in a timely fashion, and then a place for them to provide feedback and to request to be contacted by a supervisor to discuss their experience. So in this way, it's going to enable your community members to offer feedback on specific interactions that they have had with their department in order to help you improve service quality and to help citizens feel heard. The next page in the police transparency solution is around workforce diversity. Workforce diversity is a key issue for many law enforcement agencies for two reasons. First, to improve the overall diversity of their sworn and civilian staff, but then also for diverse communities to ensure that the police force is representative of the community itself. And so one of the ways that agencies are looking to do that is to provide information to their community members about the current diversity of the department, and then to be able to provide information about what they're doing to improve diversity through recruitment or other types of hiring or internship efforts. So to help with that, we've built a law enforcement diversity dashboard. This is showing by race and ethnicity and gender the breakdowns proportionally for your agency, and in light blue, the corresponding community proportion drawn from, in this case, the American Community Survey Quick Facts site, but you can really use any value that you want. So the way to read this dashboard is, in this example agency, 74% of all of our employees are non-Hispanic white, while the community overall is 31% non-Hispanic white. Or the female representation in this fictional department is 24%, while the community overall is 48% female. In addition to this summary page that compares the proportions of demographic groups in your agency to the community, there's also a details page that lets you explore breakdowns by rank, race and gender, and years of service. So for example, if I'm interested in saying, okay, I am interested in understanding the representation of Black females on the police force, I can click on the chart, and all of the other charts and elements automatically filter. I can see that there are 47 Black females in this department. I can see their average age, breakdowns in years of service, and I can see breakdowns by rank. So in this way, it not only provides a quick overview of diversity across the department, but enables your community members to ask questions of topics of interest relative to workforce diversity. The workforce diversity page also has the ability for you to share resources relative to your workforce diversity initiatives, whether that's recruitment initiatives, explorer programs, or other types of initiatives that are relevant to your municipality that you want to be able to share with your community. The third page in the police transparency solution is the crime stats page. So the purpose of this page is to provide transparently information about crime statistics that are going to help citizens become more informed about patterns of crime in their community, to be able to become more engaged with efforts to both ensure that we're tackling those problems effectively, and that also that police operations are applied in a way that are equitable for the community. And the place that starts with is a summary dashboard. This is the crime summary dashboard, and the crime summary dashboard is showing long-term trend information across three main categories: crimes against persons, crimes against property, and crimes against society. Those categories, if you are in law enforcement, but those categories don't sound familiar to you, it's because those are the three primary categories according to the new National Incident-Based Reporting System, the NIBRS system, that is the FBI's new standard for nationwide crime reporting. This is a change from the previous system called the Uniform Crime Reports Summary Reporting System, where the three main categories were Part 1 crime, Part 1 violence crime, Part 1 property crime, and Part 2 crimes. So all the dashboards that you'll see here are really reflected to the new forthcoming standards. If you are not reporting crime according to those standards, or you prefer the old standards, our help documentation provides guidance on how to change these to reflect the older UCR summary reporting system standards. But these enable you to see change over the last 365 days, counts of crimes by year, and counts of crimes by month over time to understand broad-based trends. And from there, 2 apps to enable you to explore crime trends in further detail. The first one is called the Crime Trends Dashboard. The Crime Trends Dashboard is a way for you to understand long-term trends by a particular neighborhood or by a particular crime type. So I can filter by my neighborhood, I can filter by a particular type of crime. And you'll notice when I do that, it adjusts all of the year-by-year statistics and month statistics. I can see last 28 days, year-to-date, and last 365, as well as hotspots for that particular type of crime. As I zoom in, the individual crimes occur, and I can see detailed information about those crimes. Likewise, the second crime mapping app is really for understanding what's happening now around my home or a location of interest. This application is called the Public Crime Map, and the Public Crime Map is really intended to help citizens understand and explore current crime conditions around their location. So it shows by default the last 28 days of crime. I can see a list and count of crime that's occurring citywide during that time period. If I click on any one of them, I can open up this group and I can see the information about that crime. I also have the ability to filter by offense category, by weapon type, by location type, any combination. If I want to, you'll see down here in the corner, I can also create custom filters as well based on any combination of values. But the kind of key value of this particular app is to help community members ask and answer questions about crime conditions and then generate reports. So maybe I am a downtown business owner and I am interested in understanding, getting a list of all the crimes that happened in my particular neighborhood. Typically that information goes through as a Freedom of Information Act request, and an analyst or some other personnel is going to be responsible for filling that. Now, using the report widget in this public crime app, I, as the business owner, can simply start to draw a polygon that defines my business district, and I can generate a report that will tell me all of the crimes that are occurring in this particular area, and I can also generate a hard copy version of that report. I can modify the name or any of the details information and get a list, and as this finishes completing, a printed map of the crimes in this location. If I was also interested, I would have the ability to download this data if I wanted to be able to take it either as in a CSV form, if I wanted to take it to a community meeting or some other forum. The last app on the crime stats page is really, after you've learned a little bit more about crime conditions in your community, we've provided an opportunity for you to, as a citizen, to tell the police department what you think about your perceptions of community safety and your perceptions about performance of the agency. So this is a configuration, again, of Survey 123. In contrast to the police interaction form, this is intended for sort of broad-based perceptions around a number of different areas. This is drawn from the United States Department of Justice's 2014 Community Survey on Public Safety and Law Enforcement, and could be used by a law enforcement agency to gather information on public sentiment about a variety of different topical areas around community safety and policing satisfaction. So perceptions from a community member about the community involvement of the police agency, perceptions about priorities for safety, and whether or not your perceptions of safety have changed over time. Procedural justice questions and perceptions about the fairness by which the agency treats members of the community. Performance generally, satisfaction with contacts that you have personally had with police department. And as you'll notice, all of these questions are conditional based. So as you make a selection, it may prompt you for additional questions. And then the ability to share your demographics with inclusive gender identity and racial and ethnic identity questions. So that is the overall crime stats page. As you'll notice here on the bottom, if you want, you can also provide additional resources, maybe to the crime reporting resources for your state or to the FBI. So maybe the Crime Data Explorer, other links to information about NIBRS or the Uniform Crime Reporting System generally. So the last page of the police transparency solution is the page around use of force. And this is for many communities, given the events that have happened over the last 6 to 9 months and the questions and expectations that are being raised by community members of law enforcement agencies to become more accountable and desire for community members to exercise oversight over law enforcement agencies. This is an important way for law enforcement agencies to demonstrate transparency by providing public data about use of force incidents, the subjects of those incidents and the demographic characteristics of those subjects, and the officers involved and the demographic characteristics of those officers. But one of the most common issues that often arises as law enforcement agencies start thinking about how to report use of force information is what exactly to report itself and how to help community members understand what is often very complex scenarios that also involve very complex data. And so what this site attempts to do is to help you as a law enforcement agency help your community members understand fundamentally what use of force is, why officers use force, what your policies are with respect to the application of force, and what the proper application of force should look like, and then some high-level metrics around that, and then some tools to enable community members to dig in a little bit deeper to explore characteristics. For those of you who've worked with use of force data, you know that there's a number of many-to-many relationships in this data. In one use of force incident, there can be one or more officers and applying one or more forms of force to one or more subjects of force. It's a very complicated set of data. What we've tried to do with respect to this particular solution is leverage as much as is possible the data schema that comes from the FBI's new use of force reporting database. That is currently a voluntary reporting database, but in the same way that UCR, NIBR's crime reporting to the FBI is voluntary, but often subject to, as a requirement for various forms of federal grants to municipalities. I'm expecting that there's going to be a similar thing that happens with respect to use of force. So our thought process was, let's design the solution as much as we can in a way that aligns with the structure of the FBI use of force reporting database to simplify the process of organizing use of force data for law enforcement agencies that both want to leverage this solution and ultimately may need to provide information to the FBI database on use of force. So this page helps community members to understand use of force at a high level. And the very first place that you start is around key use of force metrics, and those are total use of force incidents by year, as well as serious injury use of force incidents, so those that require hospitalization or medical care. And then ultimately, if they occur within your organization or within your agency, fatal use of force incidents by year. And then as you move down the page is really intended to help tell a story about the context of force in your community. How often is force required in interactions with the community? And to do that, we have a chart that can be fed by your own data that contextualizes the relative infrequency of the use of force relative to all police interactions. So this chart helps you show, well, in this case, we had 100,000 calls for service in a year. And in that year, we only had 5,000 arrests. And of all of those incidents, we only had 500 total use of force incidents and only 10 serious injury force incidents and only 1 deadly use of force incident. So this is a mechanism by which you can start to illustrate that while force is a very serious issue, it is very infrequently applied and required for officers working in your community. And relative to the appropriate use of force, being able to demonstrate how frequently the use of force incidents are consistent with policy for force versus out of policy. And so this information is coming directly from your use of force incident data that's part of the solution. And then you can use this section, why do officers use force? And you could supplement this with additional text to explain really the reasons and the situations why force has to be applied. And so just helping to community members to see the different scenarios and in contexts when force has to be applied and the types of calls that are more risky for force to occur. And then ultimately, since force is a response to the resistance posed to the officer by a subject of force, showing the different types of resistance and how frequently they occur, and then ultimately, based on the use of force continuum that's consistent with your use of force policy, the type of force that gets applied and how frequently that type of force gets applied. So the goal of these three charts is really to tell a story about why force is applied by officers and the scenarios when it has to be applied according to your use of force policy. And then, of course, the piece that is kind of priority for many communities is the racial equity aspects of the application of force, particularly where there's concerns about the disproportionate application of force in communities of color specifically. The use of force by race and ethnicity dashboard helps you do this. And what you're seeing is the percentage of incidents by demographic group and the comparative proportion of that demographic group in light blue. So the way to read this is, for this example data, 58% of all use of force incidents involved a Black person. The community as a whole is 32% Black. So according to this, the application of force at a high level, obviously there's it's much more complicated than that, but at a high level, Black individuals are overrepresented in use of force incidents relative to their community makeup. I can filter this by the level of force. So if I wanted to look at serious injury use of force specifically and compare that, I'd have the ability to. I can also look at this year specifically versus last year to be able to look at change that's happening over time. And I have the same ability to do this for officers. So if I want to look at officers, I can see in this example, 85% of all use of force incidents involved a non-Hispanic white officer in comparison to a community that is 31.7% non-Hispanic white. So that set of charts and that dashboard is sort of the first step into helping citizens contextualize and understand use of force and the application of use of force in your community to enable them to understand use of force and dig in a little bit deeper. You have 3 dashboards that are available in this section. Whoops, excuse me, I'm just trying to clear some pieces and parts of my browser. A use of force by subject dashboard that's going to enable them to explore demographics and incident circumstances of the subjects of force. A use of force by officer dashboard and a use of force by neighborhood dashboard. I'm going to start by hopping into the use of force by subject dashboard. The use of force by subject dashboard enables you to look at the characteristics of subjects of force in your community across 4 main lenses. You have on the side a number of filters where you can filter anything by level of force, by the specific type of force applied, by the gender of the person who is objected to force, by their race or ethnicity, and by their age range. All of the charts in the dashboards are also interactive. So I can see on the first page, persons subjected to the use of force, the context of incidents, so the level of force used, the result of the internal review of the use of force, the type of call, the reason for contact. I can see the conditions of the subject. Was the subject injured and what type of injury? Was the subject armed and what type of weapon were they carrying and what type of resistance did they pose? And was the subject impaired in any way according to the officer and what was the nature of the impairment? As I mentioned, any of these can be filterable. So if I was interested in specifically electric, taser, or conductive electric weapons, and I want to see the data specifically for those, all of these charts adjust automatically to that information. And then the last tab in these charts is a map. And the map lets me see all of the locations of those incidents, the points are symbolized by color according to the race and ethnicity of the person subjected to force. And you'll notice that in the background, we also have census tracts shaded by various colors. This is the Esri Living Atlas layer that looks at the predominant race or ethnicity of a census tract according to the American Community Survey. So what this lets me do is, at a glance, observe geographic patterns of use of force where the subjects of force are inconsistent with the underlying community. I can click on this particular census tract and see that the predominant race is non-Hispanic white, and I can see breakdowns by race and ethnicity. And then I can click on any one of these individual cases and see information about that particular case. The use of force by officer dashboard behaves in virtually the identical same way, where I can see demographics about officers involved in use of force, the context of those incidents, and a map that helps me understand the locations and geography where those occurred. If you're interested in a more geographic-based context, the use of force by neighborhood dashboard enables me as a community member to ask questions about my particular community. It will filter events for that particular community. I can see counts by level of use of force over time, and I also can see high-level information about the demographics of people who are subjected to force, the type of force applied, and the types of calls that those use of force incidents are occurring in. And I can then, if I wanted to, compare that information to other communities nearby to compare and contrast between different neighborhoods in my overall town or county. The last part of the use of force page in the police transparency solution are your additional resources. So a place for you to make publicly available your use of force policy so that community members can learn more about your use of force continuum, other types of highlights of your policy that represent progressive modern practices, less lethal technologies, de-escalation, duty to intervene, all of those kinds of things that you want to highlight about your policy. As well as information, public information about your specific internal review process. So that was a look at the police transparency solution and all of the different apps that are available to you as part of it. One thing that I did want to mention is that this solution is, as I mentioned, mobile compliant. So as you change the size of your browser, you'll notice that as I'm changing the size of my browser to fit more of a mobile device kind of size, it's changed the look and the feel of this particular solution. And then as I even go down to these dashboards, the dashboards themselves change to a mobile-friendly style. So you'll be able to leverage these whether or not you are working from a desktop or laptop or from a mobile device. So now that you've seen the police transparency solution, if this is something that you're interested in for your organization, how do you get started? Well, first and foremost, what do you need? As far as software is concerned, what you need is extremely low. You need a ArcGIS Online organization, and you need at least one creator named user to be able to deploy and maintain the solution. It's leveraging ArcGIS Hub, which comes free at the basic level as part of your ArcGIS Online subscription. If you're going to leverage that community crime problem solving process, you're going to need an editor named user for each of your community policing officers. However, that's optional. That's not something that you have to have or have to deploy. If you were interested in, oh, you know what? I neglected to show this, so I'm going to hop back into the demo very quickly. I forgot to show in the community engagement section at the very bottom of the page, if you are a Hub Premium user, you also have the ability to leverage the events calendar and the ability to create events as part of Hub Premium. So you can have an event calendar, you can show all of your community engagement events, and community members who sign up for a community identity as part of Hub Premium can indicate that they plan to attend, share this information and follow any of these kinds of activities and get directions for where all of these events are occurring. That is a capability specifically with Hub Premium. That's an additional cost that is going to enable those community identities for your citizens to follow and receive updates about updates that you make to your transparency site. It's going to let them use ArcGIS Online apps. So if you want to engage them in projects to collect data or analyze data as part of crime problem solving projects, you can do that. And it lets you help them track their submitted problems that they submit using their that community crime problem reporter, as well as creating events using the event calendar. The other thing that you're going to need to get started is branding. So a big part of this, since this is a public-facing site, is styling it to your particular agency needs. And that means your logo, images that reflect your agency and your officers, and text that gets revised to match agency messaging. So maybe working with your public information officer to be able to support that kind of work. As far as data, what do you need to bring to the table to be able to hydrate all of these apps that you've seen? Well, first and foremost, you need crime data. And that can be a flat file of crime data that's going to have valid latitude and longitude data. So maybe that's already being captured by your records management system, or if it's not, that's something that needs to be geocoded by your crime analysts. That can be in a spreadsheet or a GIS form. And if you don't want this to be a manual process, which it supports out of the box, we also have tools to support automated updating. And that information is in our help documentation, how to access those tools to be able to automate the process on a daily basis of importing a spreadsheet, geocoding it, or rendering the XY latitude longitude data, and then publishing it into the crimes layer that powers the police transparency solution. You need use of force data. And the way that we've organized our use of force data is in kind of 3 tables. There is an incident table that's going to capture information about the incident. So the location of the incident, the latitude and longitude, the date of the incident, the overall level of the seriousness of the incident, that kind of information. There's another table that is going to be information about the demographics of the officer involved. And then the third table is the demographics of the subject of force. Each of those tables is going to have the case number for that particular use of force incident, and that's how we connect them all together. We provide you out of the box a spreadsheet to capture this data and to put that, to be able to upload that information into your police transparency solution. You also need your community policing areas or whatever other neighborhood boundaries that you want to be used for those apps. So like the My Community Officer app. Our schema has information about the officer name, a place to put the image, you know, the information about when community meetings are, contact information. So you need to be able to kind of hydrate that information with an existing GIS layer that contains your community policing areas. You're going to need a personnel roster. So that's going to be in a spreadsheet form. We've got the tools to help you upload this. It's really just demographic information and rank. There's no personally identifiable information that's going to be required to hydrate that law enforcement workforce diversity dashboard. And then for the table that's in the use of force page, you're going to need just counts overall, not record level information, but you're going to fill out one single table that's you're going to pick one year and give me the total number of calls for service, total arrests, total use of force, total serious injury, and total fatal use of force. And you'll put that into a spreadsheet that we provide to upload that into this solution. And then you'll need to get demographic information for your community. That could come from the American Community Survey, from the Census Bureau, their quick facts page. It's all on one single page. Or if you have other sources that are the authoritative source in how you want to represent demographic composition for your community, you can do that. Some people prefer to represent this in terms of existing policing related data. So demographic breakdowns by people arrested or people victimized or people stopped, or other sources from your municipality that capture that information. Any of the places that we have demographic data listed in our solution are just text fields. You can change them to whatever values are appropriate based on how you report that information. And then optionally, any additional public data sets that you want to make available. In our configuring help documentation, we have guidance on how you load all of this data and all of these different layers, how to do that to load this data into the layers that power our solution. I mentioned at the beginning that we have a solutions app. You'll find this app in the app tray that's in the upper right-hand corner of your ArcGIS Online organization. You'll see it here in red. And then you'll notice an icon that says Solutions. You can click on this, find the police transparency solution, and you will get everything that you've seen today ready to use. All the layers, all the maps, all the apps, and the hub site. I should note that this is for ArcGIS Online only. It is not currently supported for ArcGIS Enterprise due to the use of ArcGIS Hub. When it's released, we will have help documentation that provides an overview of the major information products within the solution, as well as guidance on how to use each of the pages and each of the apps and the kinds of questions that you can ask, as well as the guidance that I mentioned before on how to configure the solution to meet your agency's specific needs. And then once you've got it deployed, you've read through the help documentation and loaded your data, then it's just branding the site, and you can turn it on and share it publicly, and it's ready to use. We will share this link out to you, but this is the link if you're interested and want to explore what I've just shown you today. You can find it at policetransparency-statelocaltriad.hub.arcgis.com. And just as a note, this is part of our regular public safety webinar series. So if you are interested in webinars like this, is your first time joining us, this is an ongoing webinar. This will be our last law enforcement webinar for 2020, but we will have more law enforcement webinars in 2021. There is an upcoming webinar on November 18th, Geospatial and Situational Awareness for First Responders. So our webinar series encompasses all of public safety, and there's great content that's relevant for you, regardless of whether you're working specifically in law enforcement. You'll find things that are relevant, and you can also go to this site to find all of the recordings of all of our webinars as well. So if you haven't been to this site, this is a great place to go to find links to all of our previous webinars. So John, I know we're running a little long, but was there a few questions that maybe we can answer before we wrap up this webinar?
Thanks, Chris. We actually had lots of questions, so I think it would probably be best, being considerate of folks' time, that if we table most of them. Let me just ask one that I think is the most commonly asked question. Does a agency have to use all 5 pages of the solution when they download it?
That's a great question. I should have covered that. I forgot to mention that. So that's an excellent question, a really important question. When you deploy the police transparency solution, you get everything that you've seen. Those are all the hub pages, all the apps. You don't have to use them all together. If you saw one app that you like, you can deploy the solution, and they all come as their own individual items into your ArcGIS Online organization. So you can just use that, delete everything else, and embed that app inside of your own organizational website that may already exist. So we've really tried to make the solution as turnkey if you want all of it, as you want, but also if you just want 1 or 2 of the apps, you can deploy the whole thing, you get everything, and you can choose which of those things you ultimately want to use.
Great. So I know we had a lot of other questions. Don't worry, we have the questions tabulated. We have your contact information, so we can follow up with you directly if we weren't, and obviously we couldn't get to most of your questions, so we will follow up directly with you. Also, if you go to the next slide, Chris, once again, here's our contact information. So you can also email either of us. We're always very responsive, and we're happy to engage with you and answer any questions you have via email. Thanks, Chris. Great, great presentation today. We'll see you all on our next webinar, probably not until 2021, but thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.